Hello, algebra. How are you? Let's talk our next section. So our next section is factoring by master product. So we did a little bit of factoring in the last section, and we did that by taking out the greatest common factor, the largest number, and the variable, and we were able to factor out that part. So I'll take questions on that at the beginning of class. But to move on, we're looking specifically at quadratic polynomials. How do we know it's a quadratic? Well, it's got that squared sign in there, right? So we know it's a quadratic because of that squared sign. Now, we need to be able to identify my A, my B, and my C. Oops, that's supposed to be blue. There we go. A, B, and C to be able to do this process. Now, remember, my A value comes from what's attached to the x squared. It has nothing to do with being first if it's in a wrong order. It has to do with what's attached to the x squared. My B value is what's being attached to the x, or the single variable, and my C comes from my constant, my number that doesn't have a variable with it. It's super, super, super important that you understand that. And you should probably write that down. So, in this case, let's identify our A, B, and C. So, our A is 4 because that's attached to the x squared. Our B is positive 3 because that's what's attached to the x. And my 10 is my constant. And we go on like that for each problem where we have to identify A, B, and C. And signs matter. We'll do number 2 in class. So, number 3, what's my A? Well, it's 3 because that's attached to my x squared. And my B is negative, oh yeah, there's an imaginary 1 there, negative 1. And my C, therefore, is negative 17. Again, my sign comes with it. This is all one thing. Okay, let's move on. We are going to learn a method called box and diamond method, and we are going to use it when we cannot divide something out like we did in the last section. Okay, so how do I set up my box and my diamond? Well, I'm glad you asked. Before we do that, we need to talk about some general rules and patterns that will help us. So this part here of our diamond, we need to talk about how to set up our diamond and what things are going to look like when I have certain setups. This part here is a result of A times C. So in my quadratic polynomial, I'm going to multiply A times C, and I'm going to put that number here with its sign. Here, this section down here, that is a result of B. Whatever B is, including its sign, goes there. Okay, well, what about these here? Those here are going to be numbers that multiply to my A times C and add to my B term. So these are numbers that have to do both of those at the same time. So that will make more sense as we go and do some stuff. So a little bit of patterning. I said here, and I'm going to fill all my A's in. I should have done that part. Actually, I'm going to pause to do that. Okay, let's look at some patterns. Let's look at some patterns that I'm looking for. And this is going to be really, really important and help you a lot. So if this multiplication here turns out to be positive, and my B turns out to be positive, then my numbers here on my diagonal are going to both be positive. And so this is going to be super important. Now, what if my A times C is positive and my B is negative, well, then I'm going to have both of these numbers be negative in sign. Okay, what about if my A times C is, oops, I meant that to be a negative, because I did both the positives, is negative, my diagonal are going to be opposite. And they're going to be opposite based on whatever has the bigger number. So this has the sign of the bigger number. So when you're looking at this, and again, this will make more sense in a minute. If this is a negative 5, then whichever multiple is bigger, then that will be negative, okay? If my sign down here is positive, then my bigger number in this situation would have to be positive. That'll make more sense as we go. Okay, so let's do one of these. So I know that I've got 6x squared plus 11x plus 4. Okay, I can identify my A, my B, and my C. Okay, and now I'm going to multiply my A times my C. When I do that, what do I get? 6 times 4 is 24, and then I've got an x squared. Okay. And what is my B? Well, my B is 11x. Great. So, both of these are positive. With the patterning that we just talked about, we're looking at the first diamond there. Everything's positive. So these two numbers are going to end up being positive. Well, what does that mean? Well, I need to find my factors of 24. What are factors? Factors are numbers that multiply together to make 24. And when I look at that, I'm going to start with 1. 1 times what is 24? 1 times 24. And then 2. Does 2 go into 24 evenly? It sure does. 2 times 12. And 3 times 8. Any others? 4. 4 times 6. Okay. Are there any others? Can I divide 24 by 5? No. Can I divide it by 6? I can, and I'm going to get 4. And that repeats. So when it starts to repeat is when you stop listing them. I want you to list all the factors, at least initially. When we get really good at this, you don't have to list all your factors, but sometimes they're really close. And so it will be beneficial for you to do that and have what you need. Okay, to find these numbers, Oh, how did I find these? I took 24 and I divided by 1. I took 24 and I divided it by 2. 24 divided by 3. 24 divided by 4. What just happened? And I'm going to start at 1 and I'm going to keep going down. If it's a whole number, it's a factor. If it's a decimal, it's not a factor. Don't write that down. So don't automatically write down the 1, 2, 3, 4. Do it on your calculator or do it in your head first, and then write down the factor. Okay, so now I have to look at my box. It has to multiply to 24. I just wrote those down. Now I have to find the multiple of 24 that adds to 11. Well, 1 and 24 add to 25, 2 and 12 add to 14, 8 plus 3 is 11. Oh, there we go. That's my factor pair that I'm going to use. So that goes here and here. And now we need to take our diamond. Our diamond is our setup for our box. So our box comes from this. This square is my A. So back to the original polynomial. That's my A. And then this box is my C, which is 4. Okay? Now, on my diagonal here, I'm going to put these numbers. Oh, I forgot my x's on here. Okay? So I'm going to have 8x here and 3x here. If you put your 3x down here and your 8x down here, that's okay. All that matters is that we have them diagonal to each other. Okay, so now what do I have to do? Well, I have to distribute out. In other words, what can I divide both 6x squared and 8x by? Well, I can divide both of them by 2, and I can divide both of them by x. Fantastic. Now, I always want you to start with this box right here, above it, and I'd like you to then do this here, because if you get these two numbers set, then the rest will be easy. Okay? So, you have to ask yourself, what do I have to divide 6x squared and 3x by? Well, there's definitely an x, because they both have an x. And I can divide 6 by 3, and I can divide 3 by 3, so it's going to be a 3 there. And now how do I know that those are correct? Because if I multiply this times this, I should get my 6x squared. I do. Fantastic. So now you want to ask yourself, you can do either this one or this one. I always do this one first because it's easier just to always do it the same way. 3x divides 3x. How many times? 1. A positive 1. Okay? What number do 8x and 4 have in common? What you can do is you can look at, oh, this is a 2x. What do I have to multiply that by to get 8x? Well, positive 4. Remember, we need our plus sign here. And does that make sense for this one? 4 times 1 gives me 4. Fantastic. I have factored out all of the common terms, and I now have a binomial times a binomial. Oops, I forgot my 2. And it is 2x plus 1 times 3x plus 4. And that order doesn't matter. You could put 3x plus 4 times 2x plus 1. Okay, we're going to do a whole lot more of these so that we get good at them. Next example. What's my A times my C? Well, it's negative 10. What's my B? It's negative 3. If you want to fill this in right away, that's maybe not a bad idea. Maybe not a bad idea. And now I need to do my sides. Okay, so I have a negative number here and a negative number here. So I need to look at which one of these, which one of those pattern diamonds was the last one, because my 10 is negative. So since my 10's negative, my signs here, one of them is going to be positive and one of them is going to be negative. Now remember I said has the sign of the bigger number. So this is negative down here, and since this is negative down here, whatever the bigger number is, when I find my factors, that's going to be my negative side. So what are my factors of negative 10? Well, 10, and again, here, I do want my x squared here. Here, I don't so much worry about the x squared, and I also don't worry about the sign, because that's taken care of right here. So what are my factors? I've got 1 times 10, and I've got 2 times 5. Well, 2 times 5 can subtract to 3. And so here's where I mean that this needs to be a negative 5, And this needs to be a positive 2 because my sign is negative for my b, so my bigger number of my factors has to be negative. Okay? And I've got my x's on there. Sorry about that. So I put my 2x up here and my negative 5x down here. All right. So now I can take my stuff out. What do these going up have in common? Well, they don't have a number in common because I can't divide 2 by 5 and I can't divide 5 by 2. So just an x, it looks like. Okay. What about out here? Can I divide my 2x squared by a number and my 2x by a number? Sure can. I can divide both by 2. And an x, because I can divide this by an x and this by an x. So I get 2x times x gives me 2x squared. That's correct. Excellent. Okay, so now what here? What do these two boxes have in common? Well, they both have a negative 5. And what do these two boxes have in common? They don't have anything in common. So you would put 1. And you need it to be a positive 1 because 2x times positive 1 will give you 2x. And negative 5 times positive 1 will give you negative 5. And now you're done. I just erased my 2 here. Sorry, that's really messed up, but that's okay. You get the idea. So I've got my 2x minus 5. Again, it doesn't matter the order. You're just writing whatever's on the side times whatever's on the top, or whatever's on the top times whatever's on the side. All right. I think that's it because we're at time. I don't want to take you too much longer, so God bless. We'll do the rest during class.